Good evening, everyone, and thank you so much for joining me on Story Talk this evening. My name is Linda Johnson, and I'm here usually at 6:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. But great news, everyone! My newest great nephew was born today, and I am so excited and so happy about it. Anyway, we've been talking about a number of things over the past few weeks of this fifth season of Story Talk. Now, I have a book that's out, and it's called Let Me Show You How to Write a Book. Excuse me. Let Me Show You How to Write a Book by Linda M. Johnson, available on Amazon. Excuse me, I feel like I'm going to sneeze again. I apologize. But anyway, I wanted to come back today to continue to talk about what I have written in chapter 4 of my book, which starts at page 36. And in particular today, I'm talking from page 37 and 38 if you have the book. Okay, so I've been sharing with you all the various components based on my 10-step method of storytelling, and to help you all to get to tell your personal stories. Yes, you, because you all have a story. One of the things I wanted to talk to you about today is the concept of plot, the plot concept in your story. And the way I like to explain this, I like to explain it in such a way as though I'm explaining it to my grandchildren. Or if you are a parent or a grandparent, you want to explain it in such a way that it's more like an elementary way to our young grade school age young people. And that's the best way that I can give you a basic definition of plot. If someone asked you, I would say it's what is your story about? That's basically what the plot is. However, the plot is comprised of so many different things, and I can break them all down to you in steps. So what I'm going to do is say, take for instance, I told you this story. Let's see, there are so many different childhood stories. We have the Three Little Pigs. We have what's another good one? Little Red Riding Hood. Oh, I tell you, one of my favorites is the Three Bears. The story of the Three Bears. So in this story, you have your let me just tell you, if I was telling this to my grandkids, I would say there was once upon a time. Whenever you hear once upon a time, usually that's the start of a fiction story. Once upon a time, there was a young girl named Goldilocks. She had golden hair, and she had her hair that locked. And one day she went out playing, and she ended up in a forest. And while she was in the forest, she discovered a house. Now, what she did not know was, prior to her coming to this house in the forest, there were three bears: Papa Bear, Mama Bear, and Baby Bear. And Mama Bear had made some breakfast, and she made 3 bowls of porridge, but it was super hot. So Baby Bear wanted to go out to go for a walk for a little while. So while the porridge was, getting comfortable enough for them all to sit down and eat, they decided to go out into the forest and go for a walk. While they went for a walk, this young girl named Goldilocks, she looked through the window, she looked into this nice cozy looking home, and she saw 3 bowls of something. She didn't know what it was. And she saw the table and the chairs, and then she just decided, she was curious. And she had been running around and playing, and we don't really know her backstory, but we had to assume that she had a mother and a father, and she was probably out playing somewhere. Maybe she got lost in the forest, and then she got a little tired and she got hungry, as most children do. So she knocked on the door, and when she didn't get a response, she wanted to know if anyone was home. No one answered. So guess what? She opened the door and she went inside. So the first thing she saw these 3 bowls of porridge. That's what the bears were eating for their breakfast. And when she saw the big bowl, that was Papa Bear's. And she said, she tasted it, and she said, that's too hot, right? And then when she got to Mama Bear's bowl of porridge, she's like, that's too cold. And then when she got to Baby's Bear bowl of porridge, she said, this is just right. And guess what? She ate it all up. So that's a problem. She's creating a problem here. So then Goldilocks gets curious and she's looking around this beautiful little cozy house and she sees these three chairs. So she tries to sit in the big chair and she says, oh, it's too tall. So she couldn't get comfortable in it. And then she sits in Mama Bear's chair and she said, oh, it's too hard. I may not be telling the story the right way because I haven't read it in a long time, but you get the gist of this, right? You get the basic idea. And then when she sits in the smaller chair, which is Baby Bear's chair, she gets comfortable and then guess what? The chair breaks. So that's another problem, right? And then she's a little tired and she decides she's in this house, and I can't remember if it was upstairs or if it was on the same level, but let's say she went upstairs in the house. And she saw these three beautiful beds that was made up, looking really nice and comfortable. So when she got to the first bed, this was Papa Bear's bed, and she was like, this bed is too big. And then when she lays down on Mama Bear's bed, she says, this bed is too hard. And then when she gets into the third bed, which is a smaller bed, just the perfect size for her, she says, oh, this bed is just right. And guess what? She falls asleep in the bed. Meanwhile, as she's sleeping, the three bears return home so that they can sit down and eat their porridge. So when Papa Bear comes over to where his bowl is at, he says, someone's been eating my porridge. And then Mama Bear says, someone's been eating my porridge too. And then Baby says, well, someone's been eating my porridge and they ate it all up. Right, there's a problem. We're back to this problem, right? So then Papa Bear says, hey, wait a minute. Someone moved my chair. Someone's been sitting in my chair. And then Mama Bear says, yeah, and someone's been sitting in my chair too. And then Baby Bear, when Baby Bear sees his chair, he says, someone's been sitting in my chair and they broke it. So remember when Baby Bear discovered that his porridge was eaten, Baby Bear broke down and cried. And now that his chair is broken, and he keeps continuing to cry, someone broke my chair. So now my husband's making me laugh. I'm sorry. As I'm telling the story. Anyway, so now they go to where their beds are located in the house. So Papa Bear says he sees that his bed is not, it's like messed up. Someone's been laying on my bed. And then Mama says, someone's been laying in my bed too. And then when Baby Bear gets to his bed, he says, someone's been laying in my bed too. And there she is. And then Goldilocks jumps up. She is just like in total shock, like, oh my God. She gets up. And she has the nerve to get up and run out of the house and runs out into the shadows of the forest. And then she realizes, oh my God, first of all, there's a problem here. So now that I've told you the story, I'm assuming that maybe Goldilocks' parents was looking for her because she probably got lost in the forest, right? And then hopefully her mother or her father or whoever her guardians were, whoever was taking care of her, they obviously found her and hopefully she learned a lesson, because there are some lessons in this stories, right? So I want to break these steps down first to make you understand how to explain to a child age student or young person the plot concept, how to come up with the plot concept and how to understand it so they'll never forget it in storytelling. So first, the one thing I like to do is, like I just did, I tell the children a relatable story, something that they're familiar with, something that they probably heard, and this is like a retelling of a familiar story. Again, the three little bears, Hansel and Gretel, the three little pigs, and all of the childhood stories that we've heard, right, growing up. And I always begin to tell them a short story, something that's simple and something that's memorable, something they won't forget, like even Little Red Riding Hood or something. So in these familiar stories, as you're telling them, you're introducing the characters, right? You first want to make them understand the setting, right, where the story takes place. And in the case of the story I shared, the Three Little Bears, this story is taking place either in the forest, or in the house, or some make-believe place, right? Anyway, you want to discuss with your students and these young people and tell them, as you're introducing the kind of characters which we talked about yesterday. What are the kind of characters we talked about? The protagonist, right? And what is the protagonist? Your main character or your main characters. And then we also talked about the antagonist. And our antagonist in this case would be Goldilocks, right? So you ask your students to describe the characters and their particular roles and make them understand that. So then explain the setting. Again, where the story is taking place. In this case, it's taking place out in the forest in a little comfortable, cozy house, or a comfortable, cozy village. You want to encourage your young people or your students to imagine the surroundings, right? And then ask them about the surroundings after they read the story, after you tell them the story. Help them to use their imaginations as much as possible in storytelling. And I think that's why we should tell these stories, because then we open up new avenues to cause our young people to begin to think and to imagine. And then they begin to see images, and the more they read, they're going to begin to creatively in their mind imagine what this world looks like. Then we introduce the problem, and as I told you, in the Three Bears, there's a problem. What's the problem? The problem is there's this young girl who's basically trespassing, right? You don't just walk in somebody's house because they're not home, or because you're hungry and you see food and you just eat somebody's food, or sit in someone's chair and you break up their furniture, or even lay in their bed and go to sleep because you're tired. You don't do that. So there's a lesson that's taking place throughout the story, right? So you introduce the problem to the young people that you're telling the story to, and then you explain that every story has a conflict, every story has a problem. I think a story would really be boring if it didn't have a conflict or if it didn't have a problem, and that's what makes the story so interesting, right? And the problem needs to be solved. In this particular story, The Three Bears, the problem could be that Goldilocks is, number one, trespassing and disrespecting, right, someone's property, or trying to take over. I want to say, think about this, the smallest and most comfortable things that belong to someone else. And in this case, that someone else is Baby Bear. But she felt as though she was entitled, because everything that belonged to, think about it, everything that belongs to a baby is usually something that's special. It's always clean. It's always soft and cuddly and just right, because you want to make a baby feel as comfortable as possible, right? Listen, the porridge was just right. The chair was just right. And the bed was just right. She ate up all the porridge. She broke the chair. And guess what? She slept in Baby Bear's bed. So basically, these are all problems. These are all issues that must be addressed, discovered, and first discovered, addressed, and then they have to be resolved. So the next part of making your young people understand the concept of the plot is that you want to discuss the events that take place in the story. So as you're explaining that the plot is made up of a series of events, I just told you what those events were basically, right? This young girl got lost in the forest, right? The bears went out for a walk, and while they were out taking their walk, waiting for their cereal, their porridge to cool off so it wouldn't be too hot and they could all sit down and have their breakfast together, this young girl, she invites herself into the house and trespasses, and there's a lot of things, a lot of problems and chaos and conflicts that she creates throughout the story. So then you ask your students, or you ask the young people to recall these things, to recall these events, so that they can remember the story that you shared with them, right? Encourage them to think about the order in which all of these events occur. So at this point, you can now explain what we call the climax. this is my favorite part in the story, right? I want to say the climax is like the most important or the most exciting or intense part of your story. And this is when everything starts to get heightened and you're like, oh my God, you know. But anyway, it's I would say the climax is what we call the turning point, or where the main problem is at its peak. And in the story of the three bears, I can't remember. Is it called the Three Little Bears? I think it's just the Three Bears, right? The Three Bears. The climax could be when the baby bear's bowl of porridge had been eaten, and he discovers, right? He discovers it, and then he breaks down and cries. So that creates a little intense drama in the story. Or when he discovers that his chair is broken, and he says, someone's been sitting in my chair and they broke it all up, and then baby bear cries. So that's playing on the emotions of the reader, right? And then the even most heightened and intense part of the events that's taking place is when baby bear discovers that Goldilocks is in his bed. And then when he yells out, someone's sleeping in my bed, and there she is. And then, oh boy, when Goldilocks, she gets up and she jets up out of the house and she leaves. And guess what? She probably came to her senses like, oh my God, these are bears. What am I doing? They could have killed her. I mean, literally, these are bears, and you're invading someone's space. So as the story unfolds and the story goes on, and now, we see that there is a problem, and all of these things that's taken place, right? The one thing that you must explain to your young people or to your students is you have to think about, what is the resolution? How is the resolution is basically, how is the problem solved, or how the story is going to end. And in this case, where you're going to talk about Goldilocks, right? And you talked about Goldilocks, how she outsmarted the three bears by running away without getting caught. She ran out of there and they couldn't catch her, right? And I'm sure she probably ran back out into the forest, and her parents were looking for her. And then she probably told her parents what happened, but she learned a lesson, or maybe she didn't tell them. She was just so happy to see her parents, but I'm sure in her mind, she probably said, oh my God, I'm never going to do that again. Have you ever been in a situation like that, where you realize you did something and you're like, oh, you don't ever want your parents to find out, but guess what? You're not going to do that again. And that's probably what happened to her. So again, we don't really know Goldilocks' backstory, but we can only imagine that that's probably what happened. So while she's running away and she doesn't get caught by the three bears, there's so many ways that you can hype up the ending of the story. Use your imagination, be creative, creative writers out there. So let's just to recap, right, and summarize today's lessons. What is your plot? And remember, summarize the story for your students or your young people. Be sure to highlight all of the characters in the story, pointing out the protagonist and the antagonist, and then the setting in your story, the problem, all of the events, the climax, and finally the resolution. That's basically it. Now, in my book, Let Me Show You How to Write a Book by Linda M. Johnson, that's available on Amazon, I kind of summarized what I have in the book. But for children to explain this, you want children to understand, not just the plot is what the story is about, but how do we get to find out what the story is about is based on all the things I just shared with you, right? You have to find out first, where does this story take place? What is the setting, right? Highlighting the characters in your story. What is the problem? And what kind of events are taking place, right? And then the climax. Because that's what's going to help to really sell your story, to get people interested in reading your story, because that's what everybody's going to be talking about. Oh my God, did you see what happened? Did you see what Goldilocks did? And then finally, how was the problems in the story resolved? How did the story end? And emphasize that each of these elements together, I want to emphasize that each of these elements together is how it is what makes up the plot of a story, right? So one other thing that I want to explain to you that I probably didn't really say, and I probably should have said from the beginning, is that you definitely want to engage the students, right? And the way that you're going to engage these young people is to reinforce their understanding. Ask the students to share their favorite stories. And maybe if you can ask them to share their favorite stories and a story that they're familiar with, then you can point out in the story what each of these components are that I just shared with you and how to come up with the plot concept, right? So always, always, always encourage creativity. Always be creative, be original, be unique. Make it your own. That's what we do in storytelling, right? And encourage your students to create their own stories and focusing on developing their own characters. I have a friend and she teaches how to create 3D characters. This is one of my mentors. Her name is Monique Leeson. Oh my goodness, if you take her writing course, I promise you will. Since I took her writing course, I become a better writer. I'm just going to say that. So if you took it, I know you would too. Anyway, I will say that when it comes to young people, you have to teach young people in the most elementary way. But I teach grown people in the most elementary way also, so they would never ever forget it. So when you learn these things, when you understand these things, and then once you learn how to apply them, you will begin to always discover and know how to understand the plot concept. That's what we're calling this, the plot concept. So to remember to use the appropriate kind of language in the age group, right? Whatever age group that you're targeting or your audience, right? And in this case with young people, you have to interact with young people to keep them engaged and interested and learning about the plot concept in a story. And that's why as you're telling the story, then you ask questions. So I will say that if I was to tell a young group of students or young people the story, the last thing that I would tell them is that I'll ask them, what do you think the moral of the story is? And basically, I would just to kind of put it out there and see what they would say. But if I was a child, I would probably say, well, I think that the moral of this story is that you must respect other people's belongings, right? Because Goldilocks did not respect the bear's belongings, right? And you must never, ever trespass or invite yourself to take over someone else's property, because it wasn't her house. She just walked into a stranger's house. This story could have went another way. And I've thought of creative ways that I could tell Goldilocks's backstory. Yeah, so anyway, I hope that this helps, guys. And I hope that you all will follow me on YouTube, Story Talk with Linda Johnson. Listen, please feel free to email me at marshaelin@aol.com. That's MARSHAELIN@aol.com. If you are interested in my writing and my editing services, please visit my website. My website is www.positivethinkingwillmakeyouhappy.com. And you can, look at my blog, look at some of the things that I've written, check out my books that are available on Amazon. You'll get an idea of what kind of writer I am. Violated Victim, Validated Victor. This is my nonfiction story, and based on true events pertaining to my personal life. I'm a journal writer, so Positive Thinking Will Make You Happy, Mind, Body, and Soul. This is a real-time journal book that I also wrote, and we've been talking about standing at the gate, and I wanted to talk about that today, but I thought it was important that I stick to what I've been showing you guys, because I don't want to spend too much time on my 10-step method, because I really need you to buy the book. I need you to pick this book up, and I want you to share the book and tell your friends and your family or any writers about this book. You can use Let Me Show You How to Write a Book as a guide. That's what it is. It's a guide to storytelling. Again, my name is Linda Johnson, and I hope you guys enjoyed this. Please, please, please check out my Kindle Vella book, The Isolated Life of Leonard James. The Isolated Life of Leonard James by Linda Johnson, available on Kindle Vella. All you have to do is go to Amazon.com, go to the search field, type in The Isolated Life of Leonard James, and you can read the first 3 episodes for free. Please, please, please I need your responses. I need you to answer the poll questions, and then I'm hoping that you would buy episodes 4 and 5, and episode 6 will be coming out. I believe the date is November the 20th, right before Thanksgiving. So I appreciate you guys. And listen, if you want to be a blessing to me, you can feel free to be a blessing. My Cash App is $positive 149. $positive 149. Listen, there is no amount of money that is too small, because everything is going into what it is that I'm doing so I can help you and I can help other writers. So I appreciate you all. That's it for today, everyone, and I will see you next Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday, 6:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, and that's 3:30 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. Well, you all know the drill, right? If some of us will help one of us can help all of us. And I want to say congratulations to my niece Taylor and her husband on their new baby boy. And he was born at like 1 something this morning, and they're on the West Coast. So I'm so happy and super proud for the fact that my newest great nephew has been born. Also, please pray for Israel. I wanted to just take a pause and say, let's keep praying for Israel. And I'm going to leave it at that, because I believe that it's going to take the power of prayer for things to change in the nation of Israel. We must pray. And before I leave, I want to share scripture that aligns with my mission and my message. For positive thinking will make you happy. Based on my first published book, Positive Thinking Will Make You Happy. And that's my first solo book that I published, and my brand, and my mission and my message. And that scripture is found in the book of Philippians chapter 4, verse 8, that says, finally, brethren, whatsoever things are true, whatsoever things are honest, whatsoever things are just, whatsoever things are pure, whatsoever things are lovely, whatsoever things are of good report, if there be any virtue, and if there be any praise, think on these things. Those are all positive things, guys. And listen, don't forget to share this live. Thank you, guys. I'll see you next Monday, 6:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Bye.